All right, we are live.
We are live. Oh my goodness. So, welcome. Hi. This is the Gen Blend.
Welcome to the Gen Blend. Woohoo.
Yes, we are here. I am Sophie Wade. I'm a work futurist, and we are I upskill leaders to be able to manage multi-generational thriving teams.
And I am Danielle Farage, Gen Z speaker and work futurist, helping bridge gaps between Gen Z and older gens through learning and authentic connection.
And we are here. This is our first episode of the Gen Blend.
Woohoo. We are here to work through and solve multi-generational issues at work.
And we're going to be coming to you live with a new subject, a new topic every month.
And this is our first episode. So our first episode topic is, are you working hard enough? Which is a fantastic question. And I will let Sophie bring us in to the first sort of segment.
Right. And first of all, we will clarify that these generational labels are labels and often not helpful, but it is useful sometimes to group age groups to be able to get more understanding because there are some differences. But we start off each of these episodes. We're going to be starting off first of all with the 4 fast news topics, so articles that have sort of jumped to our attention to see what's going on in the news. And the first one, Danielle, which I want to bring to you, is published by NDTV in India. And the topic is, what is quiet vacationing, which is the latest workplace trend popular with millennials. It says that this trend involves taking time off when working remotely, and it's gaining popularity with millennials. A recent report revealed 37% of millennial workers said they took time off without informing their bosses. The survey also noted that 80% of US employees don't take their paid time off. So, and that's mostly Gen Zs and millennials. So, Danielle, how many Gen Zers do you think are quiet vacationing and why? And also, do your friends typically take all their vacation that they have each year?
Well, I would say for my friends, it's mixed. I have seen some of my friends take all their vacation, likely I'm tagging along, while others take little to none. So
Oh,
I would say that it really depends on the person, how confident they are in their position, in their
okay.
company, how confident they are within the culture, and also how confident they are in interpersonal communications with their bosses.
Okay, interesting. So if they don't feel confident, they actually don't feel that they can take their vacation. Because I do remember, I was actually tracking the unused vacation days prior to the pandemic. And by the time, in 2019, I think the number of unpaid vacation days, the number of vacation days not taken in 2019 was well over 700 million.
Oh my
So
gosh.
this is a confidence issue. This is kind of like how people feel or how secure people feel in their work.
Yeah, and going back to your question about like why this is happening, I think partly because especially in a tight economy where it's really an employer-led market, people are afraid to come off as slackers. They know that they have to quote unquote earn their place, right? And really impact the bottom line and show that impact even if they're getting the job done, which in my opinion also reflects this wider challenge of this transition that we're going through from this time-based working, right?
Right.
Where when you show face in the office, it means that you're being productive. When you don't, it means that you're being less productive, to performance-based evaluation, which is really where we want to be and where we're going. So we got to speed that transition up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's challenging, and I think that transition, this uncomfortable period, we all need to be managing it, whatever generation we are, because we're all dealing with it differently and interpreting it differently. I think.
Oh yeah.
What's the next news one?
Yeah. So the next Fast Four news story is published by Yahoo Finance, and
Okay.
it's about whining got us nowhere. Gen X is notoriously laid back but often overlooked. 79% of Gen X say they're forgotten in the workplace, which this generation is a pivotal yet understated force. approximately 65 million, which is the smallest.
Mm.
And the OG slacker generation label has been reconsidered, right? Whining got us nowhere, is what they're saying. We had to make a living. So perseverance and self-reliance are really the things that characterize Gen X. Sophie, do you feel like this is accurate?
Yes, I'm a Gen X, and boy, do we feel forgotten. Yeah, I mean, I think we're also called the sandwich generation, and we're sort of in between the boomers and the millennials, which are very big, have been very big generations, and millennials are the rising leaders. They're, and also lots and lots of entrepreneurs, and so I think that's maybe one of the reasons for example, are trying to bridge generations. I think, it can be easy because we have sort of almost one foot in the boomer generation, but one foot in the millennial generation. So that may be the bridge that we can provide. But, it is challenging because there isn't as much understanding and knowledge. And we are needing to fill in some of the important leadership gaps. Now, what I think it's 10,000 boomers are retiring every single day.
Wow, that's wild. Which, being that sandwich, I think proves to be a hard task, right? I've seen many Gen Xers. I was just doing this indie collective alternative MBA program, and a lot of Gen Xers are seeming to leave the workforce and start their own consultancies. Have you sort of noticed this trend as well? And if you're in the chat, I'm seeing comments roll in, which are great. So just if that's you, if you've gone out on your own, like, let us know in the comments.
Yes, and I think, they're trying to work out, they're sort of understanding how the workplace is changing, what the different possibilities are, and seeing how they can rework or sort of rethink their working lives, and maybe dial it down a bit, have a bit of different work-life balance, now that we're seeing, because they, as I said, they're bridging the gap and sort of see how the millennials have been changing or been thinking differently about work, and the boomers, and not necessarily buying into all the ways that the boomers have been so traditional in their workplaces.
Right. Plus needing to learn new technology, raise children.
Yes.
And also, as Stephen in the comments says, I think some of it is tied to placing too much of our identity in our work. It's difficult to relinquish control and take time off. Yet if we don't rest, then burnout is inevitable. 100%. All right, Sophie, take us to the next news story.
So the next one is published by HRC Economic Times. Ooh, you're going to like this one. How the quit talk trend is disrupting organizations. Some Gen Z employees have been loud quitting their jobs on live streams. It started when an Australian employee resigned from her job due to mental health related issues, posted on TikTok to her 140,000 followers. Now, this article is actually in supporting employees in the office. And I know that you've been following this, and there's not only just been this woman who resigned in a very sort of painful way and was tearful. But there's also been some other people, Brittany Peach, I think he said,
Peach, yeah,
who live streamed it, and it was a very different,
right.
It was a very different attitude that she had in terms of how she was quitting live.
Right. So we have to separate these two entirely, right? So I think the first part, and the first sort of person that posted, it was really about mental health. She felt like she was working too hard. Her job was stressful. She had mental health issues that preceded this job. And I think she just really left so that she could take care of herself, which I totally respect. And it seemed like the company also supported her in that, which is incredible.
Yes.
But the other side of it, which I think we can dive more into, is it kind of spurred this new trend of people sharing about their layoffs, their, them leaving jobs online with their
and toxic bosses, right?
Right. 100%.
So how, in the situation, I mean, it's challenging to think, it's beneficial to be sharing some of one's sort of challenges, and sometimes it's helpful to vent and get that I guess sort of validation that other people are going through it, and also it may be cathartic to get it out, but also there's the potential repercussions when they're trying to get their next job, right?
Definitely. And I think sharing stories, there's that side of it, but also there's the side of why you're doing it. And I think as a content creator, I can say, like, I create content to share stories, to raise awareness, to help other people. who might be going through a similar tough time, which yes, it can also be detrimental, but everyone has to make their own decisions. All right, that brings us to our fourth and final news story,
Right.
published by Fast Company. Why does it seem like Gen Zers are always late? For some Gen Zers, late is the new on time. 47% of Gen Z respondents to this survey said arriving 5 to 10 minutes late is still considered punctual. What do you
Well,
think?
it's funny you say that, because my father for several years was a live TV producer. So he wasn't just punctual, he was always several minutes early, which is, if you can imagine, as a teen and in my 20s, was a nightmare. I didn't want to be if he said you have to be back at 6 o'clock or whatever, when I was 15 or whatever, it really meant 6 o'clock. And a second later than that was bad. But what's the experience that you're finding with your friends, and in terms of what they perceive or interpret as being late or not?
So, what's interesting is that I did a recent poll,
Oh,
and it seems like most people would agree that within 5 minutes of the said time, we had 65% say
okay.
that is still on time to work, right? And I think work and meetings are two different things. And that being said, most meetings, A, do not need to be meetings, and B,
Yes.
don't start on time anyways.
That's certainly
So,
true. And we need to do a whole episode on meetings and how people contribute and show up to meetings and all of that kind of stuff, and professionalism too. But I think, when it comes down to, for me, I really take that empathy lens as always. And it's sort of, if my father were running the meeting, I would make sure I was, a few minutes early. But other people may be like, so I really sort of think about who the leader is, what their expectations are, because if they think it's disrespectful to arrive past, the exact time of the meeting, then the meeting isn't going to go as well for you, I think, if you don't show up for them. And so I think trying to read people and not be and sort of understand what their expectations are, I think it becomes really important.
definitely. I would not want to be late again to my entrepreneurship class in college.
Okay.
He used to make us sing to the class if you were late.
Oh,
Um,
really? Oh, that's
oh
great.
yeah, I sang once or twice.
Oh, you
Um,
did?
so that brings us to our next segment, which is very exciting, the meat of the episode, which is our blender bender. Our question of the week, as we mentioned before, is, are you working hard enough? And we're going to be addressing this hot topic of kind of ethics, even defining the meaning of work. And before we dive in, if you have any questions about the news or this conversation, pop them in the chat below. And we'll be tackling some of them in our Ask Us Anything segment coming up after this. I will also say there are some technical difficulties that LinkedIn is having with live streaming and video. So if that is happening, which I might see in the comments, just know that that's normal right now.
So bear with us. Really appreciate you being here. So yes, so Danielle, since this is about Gen Zs, are Gen Zs lazy, or is it because they're side hustling? Or is the issue boomers who are on the treadmill and they need to get off?
Well, Sophie, what do you mean by lazy?
Okay, so that's a good point. I think, well, is it that we are what is hard work? Are we redefining what hard work means? So what is the effort that is being put in? So is it the perception, or is it the reality of what work is?
I think it's kind of both,
Okay.
right? So we think of hard work in the traditional sense of, the lens of the Industrial Revolution, right? It's showing up to work early, leaving late, having as much face time in the office as possible
Right.
and doing the most, right? And being a worker bee. But I think that Gen Z sees this, right? And they don't necessarily buy into it. They don't see
Right.
the benefits of doing so. And so to answer your question, are they lazy? I think that Gen Z can and do work hard in the
Right.
right environments, but we don't necessarily believe in the same way of working that the same way since we have been in the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, I mean, I really look at it in terms of, sort of the social contract and what the compensation was. If in the beginning it was, I had a job for life to start with, And so I put in all the hard hours, doing really tough, boring stuff at the beginning. And over time, I would be able to build up a little nest egg and retire with a pension. Like, that's completely gone. And I was staying at one company. So the effort I put in at this company paid off over time. And so I think because that is all changed, that thinking about what hard work and what effort, it doesn't mean you don't do your job, of course, but I think how we're thinking about work and the effort that you put in and the compensation you're getting with,
Right.
no job guarantee, not thinking, the pension out the window. I think it really changes the dynamics of work.
Right. It begs the question, what is the point of all of this, right? What is the point of doing those extra hours? And,
Right.
To that end, it really is all about incentives when it comes to employment and benefits and, people taking job offers or leaving jobs. It's all about incentives. That's how
And
I view it.
also how people are being evaluated, right? Because you did a great post, which I absolutely loved several months ago, which showed all the apps that you use. Do you have that at hand? Because you had like 20 apps or something that you use. And for me, it's a lot about working effectively, right? So if you're working 40 hours or, whoever it might be, if they're using new, updated, sophisticated, advanced apps, including AI, what can be done in 40 hours is a whole different thing. It may be exactly the same as has been done over 80 hours in the past, right? So I think how we're working really matters too, right?
100%. And I will find that
Yeah.
post and put it in the chat as soon as I can. But I think it also begs the question of, who is working effectively and how,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, because if and how they're being judged, if we're not being focused on results and that be how we're sort of thinking about work, and I'm sort of saying, Danielle, these are the 5 things you need to get done by the end of the week. I shouldn't care how you're getting it done and when you're getting it done, because I know you talked recently with me about the different things that many Gen Zs, millennials too, I'm sure, and all of us want to be able to do. We want to reorganize our working weeks differently to be able to fit in other things and yet still be working hard, but have a different mix of how we're setting it up, right?
Right. Like, I think that a lot of Gen Zers and also millennials, like, they have the desire to walk away, from work and go for a walk or cook themselves a meal or go get their nails done in the middle of the day because
Yep.
there's actually a 10% off, there's an incentive. But I think, to that point, the assumption then that you're not working hard just because
Yeah.
you're working at maybe different hours or
Yeah.
you're working in a different way where you might have actually gotten your work done already because you're using a new AI tool, right? I think that's unfair to assume that you're not working hard. So
Yeah.
I want to see that change. And I think one of the ways that we can do that is if we're sharing more about the way that we're working with our teams and within our
Yeah.
teams. And I think that conversation has to start with the manager, right? To initiate that, hey, how can I enable you to work better? And what are you doing with that extra time that you're, maybe benefiting from AI, right? You're getting that time back. How are you using that time? Is it going to spending it with your family towards your own mental health? Is
Right.
it going to upskilling, right? That's a huge question that also reflects the company culture.
Very much so. And Stella here is saying that while compensation incentives are important, flexibility and trust are also strong points. I mean, all of these different things and trust, Stella, we are going to have a whole episode on trust because it's so key to relationships and engagement and that productivity, which I always have a pet peeve about how people do it, define it. But I think this how we're working and the responsibility, the elevated responsibility on the manager, who I do really empathize with, because there is so much more responsibility, and that goes towards the mental health, because I need you on my team, Danielle, and the other people on my team to be working effectively, and that includes making sure that your well-being is supported. And so it goes to mental health and work-life balance. And we've talked about the idea of what is a profitable work-life balance, in the sense that if I, everybody's burned out on my team, that's not going to be good for the business. So it's not going to help the profits of the business if I don't take care of well-being. What are you finding with some of the people that you're speaking with, Gen Zers, but also people that you are out there in the community and helping, advising people about Gen Zs in terms of the mental health issues, which are significant?
Well, I'll start with like what I'm seeing with my friends, which is
Yeah.
interesting that, I'm not seeing a lot of my friends bring up mental health, which is a little bit
Oh, okay.
counter to what we're hearing, just across the board. And maybe this is, it's a fluke, but a lot of my friends don't bring it up. However,
In
they
the
might
workplace,
bring
you mean?
in the workplace,
Right.
right? It's not like they're going to take a kind of a mental health break, right?
Okay.
But that being said, I have seen them take breaks for other reasons like deaths in the family or
Okay.
extra long vacations because it's like a convenient time to take a break. So and they've been met with an empathetic response. So I think that
Okay.
generally we're getting better, but at the
Yep.
same time those higher up, boomers and Gen Xers, unfortunately, I think a lot of the time, because mental health was never talked about at work, it's still so foreign to them. And
Mm,
many of them don't really believe that it should be, a topic at work. And so I think that puts those middle managers, whether they're Gen X or they're millennials, in a tough position where they sort of have to, if they're Gen Z worker is saying, "Hey, I can't work today because I need a mental health day." They're kind of put in a difficult position if the company doesn't have those allotted days set aside, right?
mhm.
And who's going to do the work at the end of the day? It falls on them, and then they have to sort of say to that upper management, well, this and that, so I think it's kind of putting them in a tougher
Yeah.
position.
Yes, and I really feel for managers. I think the lack of training for managers is very tough, particularly when there is so much more responsibility, which is so much broader. It's in when people are working distributed teams, when they're trying to adapt to hybrid models and trying to coordinate people and trying to coordinate across spaces. Because management, when you're sort of fudging it in the office and you only have to, I can check quote that you're working because I just can see you, and we're working at a faster pace. It's much less predictable. Under all of those more stressful environments, now I have to also be taking care of the mental health of my team, and trying to coordinate people and help them collaborate across generations when they have very, it's not just generational, but people have very different context, and trying to help people really understand each other so they can work together under these high pressure conditions. It's challenging. And
Definitely.
yeah, and that brings me to purpose. We were talking about purpose, right?
Yeah, and relating to Gen Z and sort of the motivations behind work, I find I always come back to purpose, not only
Mm,
because Gen Z is motivated by it, but other generations as well. I think during the
yeah.
pandemic there was sort of this wake up call, right? Of well, why am I doing this exactly?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it really helped. I think maybe it was different when work and life were very different, and but now it's so much more integrated. And it's like, sort of, what's the point if I don't know why I'm going to work? Because it's not about just getting out of work and getting my paycheck, but it's really integrated, and I need to connect with that, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? I think it becomes challenging, and it's not sort of pandering to it, as you say. It is across every generation, and I find that when we aren't so connected, we don't have that security in our jobs. That's also one thing that really helps us, as I said, connect to a company, and what this is why I'm here. This is why I'm doing, not just my job and how that contributes to it, but also why I'm with this group of people. Is that how some of your friends, and also the millennial group, in terms of how they're respond to and connect with the purpose of their organizations, their employer?
100%. And what I find is that even if some things about a job are a little bit off, right?
Okay.
If you're a little bit bored or you don't feel like you're growing that much or your boss is kind of annoying, I find that purpose, if you are working at a purpose-driven organization and that's a key part of, your work and your day-to-day, it will really incentivize you to still stay and
Yeah.
stick it out. I've really seen that. And I think for Gen Z more specifically, we are so passionate about purpose when it comes to work, not only because, you know, the whole religion thing and, you know, we're looking to get more out of work and sort of
Mhm.
that fulfillment piece, but also because we grew up at a time when, you know, the world is so connected. We had
Yeah.
access to understand what's going on in different parts of the world and our impact and our place in it. And so I think that's also part of why Gen Z grew up with this sort of like lens of, well, I'm going to change the world because they could actually see the world.
Yes, yes.
Wild.
Very good point. Very good point. So that's the end of our blender bender, and tackling the gnarly issue of, are you working hard enough, and what hard means. It's a big topic. There are many, many other questions. We only chose the top ones that we could fit in, and we do want to have audience questions. Anybody who has questions now, please go for it. But we did actually receive a couple of questions beforehand. So before we get it, we can see a good question in the we did have a sense, what's this said also, what about the sense of belonging? Oh, good question. Do you want to answer that, Danielle, in terms of the importance of belonging?
Yeah, I mean, but the belonging piece is huge. I think it speaks also to what um you know, I think being able to actually have those open conversations about how you feel about work and, you know, the workload itself, right? Like I think the sense of belonging really opens up the door and creates trust if it
Yeah.
is there. And a safe space, that psychological safety that's needed to sort of address any challenges that come up. What do you think?
Completely agree. And it's so important for when they can form those trusting relationships, they can feel comfortable, then they're able to take risks. They're able to be more creative. Be able to sort of throw in the wild idea that actually could be the spark that really creates, you know, a whole new direction or a new product, whatever it might be. So that psychological safety is critical, particularly also when everything is changing so much. So definitely, thank you very much, Stella, for that great point. We did also have, I was just going to go to that question that we received, which is about one of those really gnarly topics of promotions, particularly with Gen Zs, in fact. So I'm going to ask you,
Yeah.
Danielle. Someone shared this question. I've several Gen Zers and millennials. Over time, I've had several Gen Zers and millennials ask for a promotion or a pay rise within 7 or 8 months or less than a year of starting at my company. They haven't been there long enough to deserve a promotion, right? What do you say?
I mean, this question requires a much longer answer than I'm going to give, but I get this actually a lot. And I will say it, sure, 7 or 8 months might seem like a short amount of time. I think also we have to take into consideration what is their sort of framing for wanting a promotion. Like what's the reasoning behind it, but
Mhm.
also how do they see people moving up within the organization? Do they have an
Right.
example to look to for
Yeah.
what it looks like to actually, you know, work hard enough to get a promotion? And
Mhm.
if they don't have an understanding of what it takes, then sure, they're going to want a promotion sooner because it costs a lot of money to live in wherever you are.
Yeah.
And they want to be like they're very self-motivated to improve and level up. So that's the type of generation you're really dealing with, and know that it doesn't come from a place of um you know, like I deserve this and like entitlement, but
Yeah.
it's actually this like motivation to matriculate and really to level up in their
Right.
careers as fast as possible.
Yes, I shudder, but I'm also pleased you brought up that E word, because I like, instead of entitlement, I'd like to go with empathy. I do, in terms of the promotions, you know, comments that I would share is that we're working at a faster pace. There was a great article in the Wall Street Journal in 2019 which said that the new recruits, the new graduates who are coming into the workplace then, 2019, their work is 3 to 4 years more advanced than previous generations. So at that level of complexity, never mind, that was way before Gen AI threw a sort of spanner in the works. How much faster they're having to advance, and everybody's having to upskill. So why would a 2-year amount of time be appropriate. We need to be reevaluating how fast, what a promotion means, what that step up means, and how many skills and tasks people have completed during that time. So I think that's one really important thing. And the other that really struck me was the fact that many times I understand that Gen Zs and also millennials, when they're asking for that promotion, one key thing they're asking for is, do I have, as you were saying, do I have a role in this company? Do you see me progressing? Or should I be looking elsewhere because this is a dead end job? And so it isn't necessarily, you need to promote me right now. It's, where's the path? Where's the path for my progression? And do you care about me, growing within this organization? And that's a huge mindset shift, I think, for people in HR, for managers too. Does that resonate with you?
Definitely. And I think that, going a little bit into the second question that we received, which we don't really have time for, but
Right.
the answer to that question of, this whole, a friend of mine didn't really have an understanding of where she sat within the organization. They were bringing on someone new, and I encouraged her to have this conversation with her boss, where she was really opening that door to conversation and asking, where do I stand in this organization? I'm ready for the challenge of managing someone and training them and teaching them, but I also need to understand what do I get in return, right? Like, in order to give more of my time and energy, like what am I getting also? Because it really is a two-way street. And she also, wanted to understand what the dynamic would be and how the work environment would change, which I think is a really valid thing to be asking.
It is, and it's so interesting you say that, because I don't think I would ever have assumed to be having that evaluation. You talked earlier about the fact of the greater awareness, and be thinking about these things and evaluating them based on how much information we have, through on the internet and with our phones, that there is so much more understanding of all the different dynamics and the quid pro quos, and the sort of being a much more mutual and reciprocal arrangements. Very, very interesting. Danielle, we're going to have to stop, I think. Oh.
I know we're going over.
We are.
But thank you to everyone in the comments. I know we didn't get to all the questions, but for example, impact of evolving remote and hybrid work norms. Oh my gosh, that's a whole episode and a half. So we're going to be answering more questions in the future. Please continue to add them, and we're excited to tackle them as well.
Yes, and if you put more questions in the comments, we will be coming back. We will be following up when the video is posted, and we'll be answering some of those questions, and also taking suggestions. That's a really good one about, and trust as well, in terms of the topics of future episodes. We're going to be doing this monthly, and we're going to be responding to the questions that people have, because these are challenging issues and they're not going to go away anytime soon. Right, Danielle?
Yes. No, not at all. And I will also say, send us your news articles that you want us to cover and unpack. We'll also be creating a short list, our smoothie ingredients, our smoothie insights, which we'll post on Friday to summarize the key points of this episode in case you missed it and you want sort of the down and dirty. So be sure to be on the lookout for that as well.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. This was, as we've said, the first episode of the Gen Blend, Gen X and Gen Z, and we really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
And our next episode will be August 21st. So
right.
We'll see you then.
Take care. Thank you.